So we talked about protecting your ideas. Again, the whole goal of a design notebook is to try to document your progress as you go through a project. Okay, and that's your PPRs you're going to send me are just kind of a summary of those. And, good example of that is Edison is very clearly documented that Edison did not invent the light bulb. Light bulbs have existed for nearly a century prior to Edison. He's the person that got the patent. He had his paperwork in order. Some people would say, oh, he's the person that paid off the patent office clerk. Okay, maybe that's the case. The truth of the matter is, if you want to try to protect an idea, it needs to be documented. Okay, so and again, it is a design notebook's not going to win you a court case by itself, but if it's well kept and clearly dated, it's at least a piece of evidence that you can use to defend your case. Okay, so again, as you're progressing through, the hope is that you're starting to define your problem. Expect that definition to adjust as you go through. We talked about the design process being iterative, not linear, but be prepared to at least have a starting problem definition and be prepared to adjust that as you go. And then go see what ideas are out there, and then let's talk about generating your own ideas, putting your own ideas together. Often this is called brainstorming. Brainstorming is a specific type of synthesis. Synthesis is simply where we take sets of ideas, sets of information, we try to put them together into a new set of ideas. Creative thinking, trying to form a larger whole from the base knowledge. Now that's pretty simple and straightforward. That's not too complicated. What's really complicated are the things that prevent good creative thinking, good synthesis from occurring. We're not going to talk about all these, but we'll talk about a few of these. But knowledge blocks, you should be very careful setting an idea aside. We're not pursuing an idea just because nobody knows how that works. Especially today in the information age. Information is literally at your fingertips. There may be a YouTube video already on how you do this. So just go look. Right? But some of these other blocks are really difficult to recognize when they're showing up. There's perceptual blocks, emotional blocks, cultural blocks. These are all things that the best I can do is try to point them to you and suggest just be aware that these are a thing and they can prevent you from putting together really good ideas. So a perceptual block can come in a number of forms, but one of them is where you imagine additional constraints that don't actually exist. Right? Is one of my favorites. Right, so read the instructions there. Connect all dots with 4 lines without lifting a pencil from the paper. Now, what I would suggest to you is pause the video right now. Just pause it just for a minute or two and see if you can do this. All right, so go ahead and pause. Okay, do you think you got it? All right. How many of you, just as you were trying to do this, found yourself unconsciously trying to stay within that box? Right? And actually, I've drawn the box out too far. I don't think you can. Right? Honestly, I don't think you can. I've not seen any solutions that say that. So let me see if I can remember how this goes. There's nothing saying. No, that's not it. There's nothing saying you have to stay in the box. In fact, I don't think you can do this if you stay inside the box. There we go. Right. There's no rule saying you have to stay inside this box. But it's a common thing is people will imagine that is a rule, that you have to stay within this dotted line box. You don't have to. That's not a rule. That's what we call a perceptual block. Prevents you from generating an idea because you think there's a rule there. You think there's something you can't do. Ask. let us know. See if, hey, can we do this? Is this a possibility? Now, maybe it is, and that's okay. But you at least have to ask and see, is this a possible way to solve this? Fear of failure, need for approval, needing to get to a solution quickly. These are all what we call emotional blocks, and these will prevent good ideas from coming forward. Okay. All right, so those are the things that can prevent synthesis. Let's talk about how do you do synthesis. Brainstorming is one of the most common ways of doing synthesis, and what you do when you brainstorm is you just sit around with ideas, right? You sit around, and I don't know how to tell you to do this remotely. You guys are going to have to kind of figure that out. Maybe you brainstorm on how do we brainstorm remotely. I'm sure there's solutions out there. If you're around each other, how we normally do this is we sit around some kind of a media, a blank sheet of paper, a whiteboard, a chalkboard, and you write down, okay, we need ideas for attaching a mask. If we're, for my intro students, you're designing a mask. So ideas for attaching the mask. And we just say, all right, everybody go. Tell me what ideas you have. And we start writing down all of those ideas. And the biggest, most important thing is at this point, if we're trying to generate ideas, there are no dismissing ideas. There are no bad ideas at this point. There will come a time later when you can say, no, that's a really bad idea. That's here. That's the next step. You're here. Right now, you just need ideas. So right now, there are no bad ideas. Okay? So keep that in mind. Whatever ideas come to mind, just start spitting them out. Somebody records them, and that's a good way to come up with different ways of solving something. Okay? And try to think about using conventional objects in an unconventional way. I remember one of my freshman level design courses, our instructor, one of our midterm questions was write down 20 ways to use a spoon. What are 20 uses of a spoon? And that literally was a midterm question. And the point of the exercise was to get you to think about using a common conventional object in an unconventional way. And it's a really good exercise to do. Okay? And don't just start with like, what are 3 uses for a spoon? Because that's easy. Once you start getting past about 6 or 7, you really have to start getting creative. So set yourself, when you sit down and actually do a brainstorming session, say, all right, what are 10 ways we can do this? And force yourself to really come up with 10 ways, because then you'll start getting some really creative ideas. This can be done a number of different ways as well, and this is maybe something you have to do. So in a Zoom meeting, so everybody goes out and makes their own list, and then in a Zoom meeting, each person goes around and reads their list and see what ideas that triggers in other people, and then have those recorded and then try to compile those then later. Okay, so a number of ways. And by the way, these slides are going to be available on Canvas for you. I'm going kind of quickly just to try to get this down to just a couple of videos here. And your time is valuable, and I don't want to waste it here. Another way to do synthesis is what we call inversion. I like to say, how can I make this worse? Right? So a good idea or a good example is if we want to make a building like the engineering technology building, if we want to make it more energy efficient, think about ways you can make that building less energy efficient. Invert it. And that will force you to think about what is this a function of, and what parameters, what variables can I control? Look at me using calculus there, right? How can I change this function? What variables control that function? That's what we call inversion, and that's a really good way sometimes to generate ideas, is how can I make this worse, or how can I not accomplish this goal? And that will force you to come up with some solutions on how you can actually, or the opposite of those will be how you can accomplish it. And another thing is and this goes back to your research. Go out and see how similar problems have been solved. How have similar problems been solved on those? What are some, again, just go out and try to find ideas wherever they may be. Similar solutions in similar industries may exist that you can use then and adapt or use as inspiration to solve your situation. So again, have the problem defined, know what you're trying to accomplish, and then go see what knowledge exists out there and what solutions may already exist, and then start trying to put those together as a group into what the current new ideas are going to exist. Every group's going to go through the design process different, and what you're going to find is you're going to start figuring out what are the sub-problems, what are the smaller problems within this bigger problem that we have. And every time you encounter a sub-problem, you'll go through a similar process, if not the same, of define the sub-problem, what is the knowledge that exists on the sub-problem, and what are some ways we can try to solve it. Okay. And then again, in the future, in probably the next video, we'll talk about concept evaluation. I'll try to give you some tools and some tips on trying to figure out, now that we've generated all these ideas, old ideas and new ideas, how do we figure out the best idea? But again, there are no bad ideas at this point until we get here. And then we can talk about which of these are bad ideas. And then we'll talk about how do we handle bad ideas, because it's very important that we don't just discard an idea just because it's weird. So we'll talk about that next time. Okay? So, in an online format, I can't see your faces right now. I can't tell whether this is just crazy and not making any sense. You guys have to actually reach out to me and contact me. Find me in the chat room. Send me an email. Let me know when your mandatory meetings are. I will try to sit in as best I can on your whatever those sessions are, and be available at least for a minute or two. Answer questions, see who's there, and just kind of check in with you and see how I can help you. And then I will leave most of the time and get out of your way after a couple of minutes and let you as a group meet. But I do need to know when those are. All right, guys. Seriously, let me know where you're at and how I can help you. Good luck, guys. Stay healthy out there. Loud pop here.